Hello everyone, welcome to Monday's edition and probably this week's only edition of the Chris Pritchard Cycling News Show. Alright, let's get straight into the racing news from this weekend. Let's go. First up, cyclocross season is well and truly underway and the second round of the Telenet Super Prestige Series took place in Boom and was won by Toon Arts. Quintin Hermans finished second and our very own British rider Tom Pidcock, he took third position. Hermans extends his lead in the overall championship, extending his lead by another 3 points. Over in Bern in Switzerland, round 3 of the World Cup season took place, and in the women's race, European champion Anne-Marie Wurst took the win from Alvarado. Forgive me, Mrs. Alvarado. There's no chance I'm trying to pronounce your first name. Third position was Anna Kay from GB. Now the series leader Katrina Nash could only finish 7th, but she extends a lead at the top of the overall standings. Over in the men's category, Eli Isbay extends his lead in the overall classification, taking another win, making it 3 from 3 in his World Cup campaign. His closest rival and Super Prestige winner from the previous day, Toon Arts, finished second, and third was Michael van Thurenhout. Easy. Over in Guangxi, riders are looking to end their season on a high, the highest of them all so far. And I don't mean like high as in like high as a kite, I just mean high at the top of the leaderboard. Okay? Well, that's Enric Mas. He currently leads the overall general classification by 5 seconds ahead of Daniel Felipe Martinez, who is 9 seconds then ahead of third place Team Ineos rider Diego Rosa. With only one stage to go and a third and a second cat climb coming in the last third of that stage, Mas is looking in control for the overall victory there. Now today's stage was won by UAE rider Fernando Gaviria. Was it Gaviria? Was it Gaviria? Was it Gaviria? Was it Was it? Yeah, Fernando Gaviria. And that tour will pretty much wrap up the road season for the majority of riders before we get back underway at the Tour Down Under early January. So you know what that means. Road season's done, track season's just beginning. And over the weekend we saw the European Track Championships take place over in Apeldoorn and it was dominated by the Dutch. You can see there from the medals table, the Dutch took 5 gold medals, 4 silver, 4 bronze, making a total of 13 medals, and in second place was France, still winning the same amount of gold medals, but could only manage 1 silver and 2 bronze. Jeffrey Hugeland taking the gold in the sprint. Team sprint was won by the Dutch. In the Keirin, Harry Laverson won. Over in the women's, Kristin Wild won the Omnium, and she also took the championship in the elimination race as well. Now from a GB point of view, they had a decent ride to bronze in the team pursuit in the men's. Ollie Wood took bronze in the Omnium. The ladies team pursuit dominated the field, beating the Germans by a good 3 seconds in that pursuit final. And then you had also Emily Nelson taking that European Championship in that scratch race. Bosh, just like that. That's your racing news. You are filled up on racing news. Next up, and there's been various different stories we haven't covered simply because, well, one, I've just not been able to research the stories and check them all out, and two, well, we just haven't been putting videos out, so forgive me for any stories that you want touching on and I just haven't. I saw plenty of comments talking about this story, and that's the story of Eddy Mercx. So if you don't know already, last Sunday, Eddy Mercx was out on a ride with his friends. He ended up suffering a hemorrhage and also losing consciousness after he fell off his bike. Mercx was kept in hospital over the week while doctors investigated exactly what caused the fall as well as the extent of the damage that he'd done to himself. But following the tests, following the examinations, Mercx was allowed to go back home. Now, staying with the ex-professional riders, it seems a pretty bad week as not only Eddy Mercx was admitted to hospital, but also Raymond Poulidor, he was admitted to hospital. Now, exactly what's wrong with Poulidor, we're still unsure. He's obviously keeping it, or at least his family's keeping it very private between him, his family and his doctors. Hopefully we're going to see some improvements in his condition, and even the hospital today said he has improved significantly in his condition. So fingers crossed for him that he is going to make a full recovery and make it back home. And one more ex-professional rider who still remains in hospital after, by the sounds of it, a very severe fever is Roger de Vlemink. He's been placed in intensive care and he's going to be staying in hospital for at least another week for further examinations. However, the hospital have said the Belgian is doing good now. Now, for what it's worth, everybody here at the Chris Pritchard Cycling News Show, which is just me, just want to send my thoughts to the friends and family of these riders. None of them watch this show, but it's the right thing to do, isn't it? So thinking of everyone out there, hopefully we're going to see full recoveries from all three of them. Let's get into the next story. Next up, and one man that clearly watches the Chris Pritchard Cycling News Show just to piss me off, is Egan Bernal. Because according to Cycling Weekly, I don't know if I'll ride the 2020 Tour de France. It's not healthy to kill your head thinking about who is going to be the leader and who is not. So this is Egan Bernal saying, he's going to ride it. If you are the best cyclist in the world when it comes to general classification, when it comes to climbing, chances are you're going to ride next year's Tour de France. Defending champion. Why would he not? I can understand why he's saying this. It's probably just kind of, you know when you're like the new up-and-coming person, whatever it might be, in school or in everyday life, you start a new job. You don't go in there straight away and kick the sales team leader in the balls and say, hey, I'm going to be the best salesman in here, or lady, next year. Mark my words. You come in and you go about your business and you learn from the best, and eventually you get to that point where, oh, actually, I'm as good if not a little bit better than this team leader. I think that role should be mine. But you don't want to say that, and you don't want to make out that, well, you've got to keep your ego in check, and I think that's what Egan Bernal's doing here. Just keeping it in check just a little bit. I don't want to step on Froome's toes, although I know I can kick his ass. I'm just gonna play this reserved. I might not enter next year. In the story, it goes on to say, in sentiments that have been echoed by Ineos riders over the past couple of years as their top riders compete for the leadership role at the Tour, the 22-year-old says his primary concern is doing what is best for the team as a whole. The best for that team as a whole is for Egan Bernal to be in that team winning the Tour de France. This story is going to kind of run all the way up to the Tour de France next year. Who's a favourite? Is Froome back to full fitness? Just how good is Egan Bernal compared to last year? There's loads to talk about in this story. Don't worry about leaving your comments on this one. I don't think there's any need to. I think we covered it a couple of days ago, really, didn't we? But Egan Bernal potentially not riding the Tour? Nah, not a chance. All right, and the last story we're going to talk about today is the story of Rachel McKinnon. She is back in the headlines again. Now, if you don't know who Rachel McKinnon is, she's a transgender lady competing in female cycling at the World Masters level. World Masters just took place in Manchester. She won her second world title in the sprint event, the female 35 to 39 event. And prior to that event, she was on Sky News defending her right to race in women's competition. Now, in this interview, I just want to take a look at a few of the points that she makes in here and try and, well, let's talk about them. Let's try and have an open discussion about it. Get involved in the comments down below. I will say, if you are going to leave a comment, just be respectful, because, listen, regardless of what you think of this person personally, as a transgender female, on a daily basis, she must go through some serious rubbish. When you look at Twitter, and then, yeah, she doesn't help herself a lot of the time, all right? There are things she probably shouldn't say, but hey, free speech and all that. But let's look at it objectively as possible and try and be as respectful as we can in those comments.
I'm legally and medically female, but the people who oppose my existence still want to think of me as male. They use the language of that I'm a man. And so there's this stereotype that men are always stronger than women.
So that's not a stereotype, that's fact. If a man and a woman train together, do the same things, the same sport, man's going to be stronger. We don't need to go any further than that. That's not stereotype science.
We care about the Olympics. We care about our favorite football club. We care about the Rugby World Cup. We care about sport. It is central to society. So if you want to say, well, I believe you're a woman for all of society except this massive central part that is sport, then that's not fair.
I've got a bit of a point there when this person now identifies as being a woman. In every aspect of her life, she is a woman, and so she'll be able to compete in women's events. But it is such a disadvantage to the other ladies. It's not simply a matter of just saying, you're now a woman, get in there, you can compete against the women, because it all comes back to, because sport is a physical activity. And physically, men are stronger than women if they train. Listen, this thing right here, this isn't beating any woman at the minute. It's so untrained. But train me alongside a female of similar stature, similar build. Who's going to be the strongest? I mean, you don't need a PhD to know what that case is going to be. It's going to be the strongest, right? So it's not a matter of simply just slotting her into the women's and saying, bang, there you go. It's just not going to work.
Do you think you'd have been a world champion cyclist if you hadn't transitioned?
I don't think I am a world champion because I'm a trans woman. I put in the work. And again, we have to remember, I lose most of my races. I've lost against the specific cis women complaining about me being unfair.
How easy is it to lose a race? How easy is it just to knock it off knowing that you're actually going for a world championship? When it counts, it appears that she's head and shoulders above the other competitors. Now, in a race where nothing is really up for grabs, what's to say that this person doesn't just shut it down a little bit? That's a bit unfair to say that. That doesn't really tell the whole story, does it?
This study by the Swedish university, the Karolinska Institute, which I know you've read closely, it does say that there's very limited change in thigh strength 12 months after transitioning and taking testosterone suppressants. Thigh strength, as you know more than anyone else, obviously a huge thing, particularly in sport, but particularly in track cycling. Do you accept that there may still be an advantage?
Is it possible? Yes.
And then right there, Rachel McKinnon saying that there is a possibility. I mean, it's more than a possibility. But she can't admit to it. She can't say, yes, I do have an advantage. I mean, it'd be better if she did. And she says, I have an advantage. What can we do to level that playing field? No one's ever going to do that, though. No one's ever, like Chris Hoy doesn't say, listen, Pritchard, he's rubbish. He's got a full-time job. He can't keep up with me. Like, what should I do to allow him to keep up? I'll not train for 2 or 3 months. Let's see if we can catch up. Whoever's at the pinnacle of the sport is not going to say, yes, I have an unfair advantage. Yes, I want this playing field to be leveled. There's a huge advantage of going through puberty as a man, as a young boy, going into puberty as a man, then transforming into a lady. Listen. This comes down to one thing and one thing only, and it's fairness, right? So on one hand, you've got transgender athletes who want fairness when it comes to being able to compete against the women in a women's category because they now identify as women. And then you've got those women who feel that these transgender athletes have an unfair advantage, and no matter how much training they do, no matter how much work they put in, they will always be at a disadvantage, which ultimately leads to unfairness, right? So what do we do to create fairness? Well, transgender athletes have to reduce the level of testosterone within their body, but it's also been proven that even when they do lower that testosterone, there isn't really a significant change in muscle mass and muscle strength. You could potentially increase the level of testosterone within those women that want to compete. So if you are in a category where there is a transgender athlete, is there some way we can allow those athletes to increase their levels of testosterone to try and equal out that lack of testosterone, potentially? But then these ladies haven't gone through the years that a transgender athlete has when they went through puberty as a man. So that still wouldn't really be fair, and it'll probably be illegal because they'd be having to do it with banned substances. Right, this is what I think should happen for the time being, just until we can create a more level playing field within bunch races, is that we say to these transgender women, you can compete, you can still compete for world titles. However, until we create a fairer playing ground, you can't compete in bunch races. You can only compete in timed events. That still allows you to compete in a discipline that will play to your strengths. So a kilo for a sprint style rider and a pursuit for a more endurance style athlete, right? Now, similar to what we see in paracycling, so if we let's take Jody Cundy, for instance. He competes against, in some events, he competes against riders who are much more severely disabled than him. And he's given a factored time at the end of his kilo. So he might finish his kilo in 1 minute and 4. However, with a factored time, it's basically a percentage added based on the severity of a disability. He might finish in a 1:09 and he might finish 7th overall or whatever. Why can't we just factor in times for someone who clearly has a physical advantage over everybody else? But I guess it all comes down to a transgender person and Rachel McKinnon admitting that there is an advantage, a physical advantage over these other women. If she was to do that and say, yeah, actually, okay, I admit that there's a physical advantage of me going through puberty as a man, but now I'm a lady, right? We can say, okay, you've had that advantage. So we're just gonna pull that advantage back just a little bit. You're still gonna be able to compete. You're still gonna be able to potentially win if you train and work hard enough, but we're just gonna add a factored time in. All right, that's it. All right, and we'll leave that one there and we'll end the show on that. Leave your comments down below. Be respectful with your comments, all right? What I like about my community, 9 times out of 10, we're very respectful people. We can have a laugh and we can have a bit of a joke, but ultimately there's no underlying bullying in there. Don't want none of that. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you tune in next time, whenever that might be, for the next Chris Pritchard Cycling News Show. Tish.